Hello, everybody. This is Mike, and today I want to talk about codependence in abusive relationships. If you're new to my channel, what this channel is focused on is helping people who are partners or ex-romantic partners of people who have either borderline personality disorder and or narcissistic personality disorder. Pick whichever cluster B personality you prefer. I am not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I am somebody who survived a very toxic relationship with a woman who had undiagnosed, untreated borderline personality disorder. All right, so that's what this is about. If you are a borderline and you have good relationships in your life, you get along with people, I'm not going to be talking about you. Please don't send me messages about how I am stigmatizing you, etc., etc. I don't even know you. So if I don't know you and I don't talk about you by name, I'm not talking about you. If you are somebody who suffers from BPD, the best way to make use of this channel is to understand what it's like for people that you're with. You may not understand what your mental disorder, what the effects of it actually are to the people that are with you and that love you and care about you. For those of you, if you are somebody who is in a romantic relationship or has been in a romantic relationship with somebody who has a cluster B personality disorder, that's what we're going to be focusing on, how to recover. So I'm going to be sharing some stuff today. So let's take a look at this. I'm actually kind of triggered right now. My PTSD is triggered because I'm going to play for you, and don't worry, it's not going to be anything crazy. I'm going to play for you some video in the background from a documentary I watched, which was very eye-opening to me about a lot of things, but I want to give you information to help you recover. All right, so I clicked on this by accident, but let's take a look at it. So let's talk about trauma bonds and intermittent reinforcement and how to recover from that. So first off, there is a very real thing called codependence. If you have been in a romantic relationship with a borderline or with a narcissist, and you have been in that relationship for longer, I mean, this is an arbitrary time frame, a week, 2 weeks, it could even be a few hours. I really don't care. But if you have been in a romantic relationship for any length of time, if that during that length of time there was a significant emotional enmeshment, by definition you are codependent. If you weren't codependent, here's what would have happened. You would have met the narcissist and or the borderline, and within minutes something in you would have said something is not right about this person. Now, the reason why that doesn't happen is because borderlines and narcissists have a very strong intuitive radar. This isn't necessarily conscious. For some of them it is, especially for psychopaths, this is conscious. But for borderlines, it's not all that conscious, but they have a radar. They can tell if you either are actively codependent or if you have the tendencies, even if they're they're not stimulated at the moment, they can smell it. They may experience it as a strong attraction towards you. If you aren't codependent, or if you're not, if you don't have codependent underlying tendencies waiting to be awakened, they won't find you attractive. There will be something about you they won't like. They might even be intimidated or uncomfortable around you. So I say this because just like with borderlines don't want to acknowledge that they have mental illness. In fact, many of them will go to great lengths to deny that they have a mental illness. That's not their fault. That's the nature of BPD. It's a disorder that tells you you don't have it. Codependence is exactly the same. It is, I don't know what words you want to use. It's not a mental illness. It's not a disorder. Call it whatever you want. But it is definitely a real thing, and it also tells you you don't have it. Large majority of people who come onto my channel who do not identify as codependents but have no problem launching into long diatribes about how they have been abused by the borderline or the narcissist, they go to great lengths to deny that they have any codependence. And new people come onto my channel all the time, and I'm always reading comments. If somebody says, I agree with most of what you say, but you're absolutely wrong about codependence. Just because I was with a borderline does not mean I'm a codependent. And they'll launch into, I'm an empath, I care a lot, you don't understand. Somebody recently gave me some statistic about how many people have been in borderline relationships, as though see how many people there are, they can't all have, and he came to the incorrect conclusion that codependence was a mental illness. That's not. Might as well be, but it's not. A mental illness is, we're talking about somebody who, there's something broken upstairs. There's something, there are wires that aren't connecting. Having codependence, your wires are all there, but some of them aren't firing correctly. And we're going to talk about how a relationship with somebody with a mental disorder, a cluster B personality disorder, how this actually can not only stimulate your codependence, but start to really malform the way that your brain fires and your psyche works. So in the end, you end up feeling and acting identically to somebody with a mental disorder. And that's why a lot of you, if you've been in relationships or you're currently in relationships, you wonder if you're the one that has the disorder. You're the one that feels crazy. You feel like you're going insane. You feel like you're insane. And the partner that you're with gaslights you, tells you that you don't have it. So first off, if we're going to get through this video, we have to acknowledge that codependence is a real thing. If you're not willing to accept that, it's okay with me if you have difficulty accepting it, but if you're in complete denial and you refuse to accept it, it's going to be hard for you to recover. If you want to recover from the pain of the relationship, and you can be completely healed from that relationship, you will first have to accept the reality that you are a codependent. Now, I make it easy for you because I give you this blanket statement. If you've been in a relationship with a borderline or a narcissist for, I swear to God, pick it, a week, 2 weeks, I don't care. If you've been in a romantic relationship and you've survived, any length of abuse and you stayed in the relationship, by definition, you are a codependent. Because a codependent relationship is a dynamic. If you were with a borderline or a narcissist, you were in a codependent relationship because it has a dynamic. How do I know that? Because you have no problem telling me all the abuse that you suffered. You seem to think that's some kind of badge of honor. It's not. It means that you're codependent. Because the dynamic, the codependent dynamic definition, is a relationship where one person has to take up the slack for the other person's dysfunction. Right? You did that. I know that because you write me diatribes about, here's what happened, here's what she did, here's what he did, here's what I put up with, she did this, he did that. You might as well just put the sticker codependent on your forehead. So it's so ironic when you want to tell me all of the stuff that you've survived and been through, and then you want to deny being a codependent. But you just got through telling me you were a codependent. Because if you weren't, you would have said, Yeah, there's something about that girl. I saw it from the moment I saw her. There was something in her eyes. I did not feel comfortable around her. I did not like him at all. I knew there was something up with him. That's how you know you're not a codependent. All right, so let's accept that. Let's start with that assumption. And again, if you want to recover, you will have to do that. So that takes us into the first step here. I guess let's talk about trauma bonds and intermittent reinforcement. Yeah, I'm really triggered about this. I really appreciate that this has been brought to my attention because it's been very healing for me on a much deeper level. So what is trauma bonding? So trauma bonding doesn't just happen in dysfunctional relationships. It happens in war zones. You know, if you're fighting a war and your buddy next to you is fighting with you, the trauma of the situation can bond you. That's why, you know, people, you know, vets, when they come back, if they've seen somebody, you know, if they haven't seen their, you know, their fellow soldier for 10 years or 20 years and they see the person, you know, they'll be in tears and they'll hug because they have this bond. It's a trauma bond, bonds them. They have a connection. They lived through an intense experience, survival experience that bonded them. So this is what happens in dysfunctional relationships. There's a trauma bond. Actually, the difference, though, instead of being two people fighting a war and they're surviving a trauma coming from some other unseen enemy, your partner is, in fact, the person who creates the trauma and then uses that to bond with you. And you use it to bond with them. So there's all kinds of things that happen in the brain. You know, there's the release of oxytocin and dopamine, and then the other stress ones, which adrenaline, and I forget all the other ones. There's, you know, basically there's good feeling hormones, and then there's, you know, stress hormones. And so you bounce back and forth between these two. So first comes the love bombing, which both narcissists and borderlines do. They love bomb you. They make you feel utterly loved and accepted. And because you came into this relationship already primed, whether you knew it or not, there were codependent tendencies within you, whether you want to accept it or not, or whether you were aware of it, or whether they had been stimulated. Maybe they were, they had gone into remission, or they were whatever. They're there. The borderline or the narcissist love bombs you, which awakens you to this feeling of, oh my God, this person is my soulmate. So let's talk about, by the way, this is the same for twin flame. It's the same thing. You feel somebody's a twin flame, you feel somebody's a soulmate. They may or may not be, but whether they, even if they are or are not those things, one thing is sure. The oxytocin and the dopamine have been triggered within you, and you feel as though you are loved more deeply than you have ever been loved. Or really what's happening is it's stimulating in you the feeling that you didn't get as a kid. So the kind of love that bonds an infant to a mother, that's what's being stimulated. It's that level of feeling loved, nurtured, seen, understood, supported, mirrored. There's a feeling of that. It's not real, but it is a feeling. So that feeling releases a bunch of really positive chemicals which bond you. They're there for a reason. Every romantic relationship, even healthy relationships, start with the bonding, and it starts with a projection, a transference. When you meet somebody, if you haven't known them for more than a few hours, but there's this intense attraction and feeling of intimacy, it is guaranteed that that feeling is, you know, a dopamine, oxytocin, which is giving you the feeling that you love this person. It is a transference. You are transferring. If you've ever heard the word transference, this happens with therapists all the time. I'm a teacher, I'm a counselor and a coach. It happens with me all the time with students and clients. I'm aware of it, so it's part of the process that helps me do my job. As long as I'm aware of that and I keep professional boundaries, they're safe, and so am I. But in relationships, you meet somebody, it doesn't matter if you feel this strong attraction, you're transferring. You're taking feelings that you had for your mom, your dad, or somebody else. It could have been your previous relationship. You are taking those feelings and transferring them to somebody else, and you're seeing them in a way that's not accurate. That's okay. It's the way nature has set it up that way. If we didn't project and transfer, nobody would fall in love and nobody would have children. The species would stop dead. Nobody would do it. If you saw everybody for who they were, you would be like, wouldn't matter. You wouldn't want to fall in love with them. So this is a very real thing. And so that's transference. Projection is you have within you a feeling that you want to experience for yourself. This is really important. Projection, when I talk about you are projecting onto the borderline, it means that you want to have somebody give to you what you are giving to them. The empaths who want to wear their red cape and have their big red E on their chest as a badge of honor. I am an empath, meaning I am full of all of this love. I am full of all of these feelings. That's why I'm with this woman, because I have so much love for her. I'm an empath. You don't understand. Well, that's what you want somebody to feel for you. It's called projection. You think you're having it. You're full of tears thinking about how much you love them. It's your projection. It's what you want to have somebody feel for you. And people call it empathy. It's not empathy. Even psychologists, I'm saying psychologists, psychiatrists throw this word out, empathy, wrongly. That's not empathy. The definition of the word empathy means to feel within. It means to actually feel what the other person is feeling without any attachment. But you aren't without attachment when you are loving your borderline or your wounded kitten, your baby, whatever it is. You are projecting. It's empathetic because you go, oh my God, if I was in that position, I would want this. Now, the difference is when you're with your borderline, you're not thinking to yourself, wow, if I was in that position, I would want this. Oh, that brings up some feelings. You actually become overwhelmed with this love and this desire to take care and nurture. And it's projection. It's what you want somebody to do for you because you didn't get it. At some point in your life, when you were a little kid, you didn't get it. That's why empaths talk about, ever since I was a little kid, I felt everything so strongly. Ever since I was a little kid, I knew I was different. I knew I didn't belong. I knew that I felt more than everybody else. That's because you didn't get it. It's because you didn't get the love. The need within you became overwhelming. You were overwhelmed with your feelings of needing to be loved and nurtured. Those are legitimate feelings. Do you feel the shame when I say that? Do you feel shamed when I say you had an overwhelming need for love and nurturing? I felt it. I felt shamed as soon as it came out. That's so weak. You're such a weak, pathetic, right? You have that, and because of that shame, because you didn't, either you were actually shamed by your parents who said, knock it off, I'll give you something to cry about, or they just didn't give you the love and you came to the conclusion that you didn't deserve it. That shame is intolerable, so you shove it down, and then you project it, right? You become an animal lover. Ever since she was a little girl, she lived with us, and her father and I, we're not very emotional, but she was a very emotional little child, and she, from a very little age, would play with dolls and loved animals and loved kittens and puppies, and it's because she's not getting it from mom and dad. The need for all of that love, she feels shame, she doesn't feel worth it, so she projects it onto the dolls, onto the animals. And then we get to say how unique she is. She's so unique. She's full of all of this. She's always just been so loving and so empathetic. In fact, she takes things a little too much. She's too sensitive, right? I know I'm describing everybody that I'm talking to, and I know that you thought it was because you were unique. The other thing I hear from people, which I understand, is people want to tell me how unique their relationship is with their borderline or their narcissist, how their experience is unique. People want to email me. Again, the narcissism. People will, watch. All you got to do is just watch the comments. At some point, guaranteed, you will see somebody say, hey, can I get your email? And you'll see me go, why do you want my email? And they will say, I want to share with you my case. I want to share with you my relationship. It's really unique. You'd really like it. You'll see things like, I really wish you were close by. I'd love to hang out and have a beer with you. What that means is that I'm sharing with you all of this. You're isolated because if you've been in these relationships, part of the abuse is to isolate you, so that nobody understands what's really going on, because if they did, they'd talk you out of it. So you isolate yourself to protect the narcissist or the borderline, and the borderline shames you to keep you, or the narcissist shames you to keep you isolated so they don't get mortified, they don't get caught. So you end up feeling that you're unique, and this will kill you. It literally will kill you. So whenever you hear me talking, go watch. Oh my God, you're talking exactly about me. Your experience was exactly like mine. Well, that's because they're all the same. Everybody's experience with a borderline and a narcissist is the same. There's nothing unique about it. It's general run-of-the-mill. Sorry to break your bubble. I know you want to be unique and special, and of course you are in other ways. In your abuse, there's nothing unusual about it. All right, so I'm getting off topic here. So, bottom line is, so the trauma bonds is you're being abused, which creates trauma. Now, they don't abuse you beyond a certain point. They don't push it so far that they push you away, especially with narcissists. Borderlines do, they act. Anyway, I want to get into all that, but borderlines do, but we won't get into that at the moment. Right now I'm talking about narcissists. So narcissists will push the abuse, but they won't push it too far. They'll push it as far as they can to create trauma within you, to shame you, to guilt you, and then they'll pull back. And then after they've pulled back, they will sit back and let you deal with it, because then you'll continue to do all the work within you. The shame, the guilt, the rumination, all of that. You'll do that on your own. And then when you get yourself kind of put back together, then they'll love bomb you. They'll give you a compliment, but they'll give you some slight gift or something. This is, by the way, why cops do good cop, bad cop. It's abuse. And they do it for that reason. It creates a trauma bond. That's why, when somebody's taken hostage, prisoner of war, there will be the torturer who will come in and torture you, and then then the torturer will go away, and the other nice guy will come in with cigarettes and coffee. It creates this back and forth. It's a complete manipulation of your trauma bonds and your all of the crazy chemicals that go on in your brain, which keep you from seeing anything objective. You're just trying to survive. And so this is what happens. This is why borderlines and narcissists can keep you trapped in these really extremely abusive relationships when the objective reality is you could just get up and walk away. There's nothing stopping you. There's nothing stopping you from calling the police, having the police come and take the abuser away. I've shared when I was a kid, I was 15 years old, and watch what happens. I'm going to share this story again and watch what happens. There are going to be people who are going to leave comments and they're going to be mad at me. And they're going to start calling me names because I'm going to point out their trauma responses. And they're going to think I'm victim blaming them, which I'm not. So watch what happens. I'm pretty sure usually every time I share this story, somebody will drop some comment in the comments section. Maybe not on the live thing, but in the comments section. I was 15 years old. And I was in the car with a bunch of my friends. Maybe one guy was 16. He was driving the car. There was 4 or 5 of us. And, we were, back in the 70s, smoking cigarettes and, rebelling and all that, whatever, listening to Black Sabbath and all that. And we're driving along the road. And in front of us, this car slows down. It doesn't stop. It slows down. The passenger door comes open and this woman comes tumbling out. Somebody had pushed her out of the car, then closed the door, and then he drove off. And she stood up and she was shaking. Of course, she was bruised and bleeding because she had just got pushed out of a moving vehicle. And she was just obviously very traumatized. We stopped. I was 15 years old. I was a little kid. At 15, I was little. I was a late bloomer. But we got out and we said, "Are you all right? Are you okay?" And she was just not at all. She was not home. There was nobody there. She was so traumatized. Then, guess what? Car turns around and comes back, and I was furious. And I stood there and I was fuming, and I had my hands in fists. I was a little 15-year-old. I couldn't have done anything if I wanted to, but I was furious at this guy. And of course, he saw that and got in my face and stood over me and started threatening me and intimidating me. And thankfully, a bunch of other people pulled over, and a bunch of other adult males got out of their cars, and they started getting in that guy's face. And everybody was telling the woman, because other people saw this. Other people saw her get pushed out of the car. Everybody was saying to her, "You don't have to go back with him." And this was back before cell phones, because if we had cell phones, we would have called the police, right? But we didn't have cell phones back in the 70s. So people were saying, "Get in the car with me. The police station is right down the street. We will take you to the police station. You are safe." Had to have been 10, 15 people, men and women. She could have chosen whichever car she wanted to get into to have been safe. And of course, the abuser was there, and a bunch of guys were holding him back and saying, "Yeah, why don't you try picking on somebody your own size," that kind of thing. So he was out of the picture. But she stood there, and she didn't say anything to anybody, and I don't know how long it was. It had to have been at least 5 or 10 minutes. And then she willingly, without saying a word, got back in the car, and they drove away. And I stood there. I had never seen anything like this. I didn't understand anything about, physical abuse or any of that, other than what I had experienced, from my brother, which was different. But I couldn't understand. Why did she get back in the car? She chose to do it. Nobody forced her. There was no abuser there physically forcing her or threatening her. He was shut down. There was 5 or 6 men standing between him and her, and he was not doing his normal thing. She voluntarily chose to get back in that car. Now, that's what I've been saying. Codependence is a voluntary thing. You can't claim to be a victim if you've chosen to do it. That's the objective reality of it. That's not the internal reality that you experience, but that's the objective reality. And in order to recover, you must accept that there's something within you that seeks out and accepts the abuse. And I'm just telling you, that's, in my experience, that's the only way to recover. So I take full responsibility. If you want to heal, you must take full and complete responsibility. In that moment, when that woman had 5 or 6 women and a bunch of other men and people and 4 or 5 different cars that she could have got into and drove 5 minutes down the street past to the police station that she passed on the way to where she was. For her to voluntarily walk past everybody and walk past the men that are like, no, no, and she's walking past the men, going back to the abuser and getting in the car. The objective reality was that she voluntarily chose to get back in the car with the man who was abusing her. That's a fact. So the only other thing we can talk about is there must have been something going on psychologically, internally, that we obviously can't see. I didn't understand it by looking at it. But for her to have, in that moment, and I hope she found, healing later, but in that moment to start her process of healing, she would have had to take full responsibility for choosing to either go in the car or go to the police. She wasn't taking responsibility. So if you are abused by a borderline or a narcissist and you keep volunteering, the objective reality is that that was your choice. That's a fact. You can feel like I'm victim blaming you by telling you that. That feeling doesn't change the objective reality. But at the same time, there is the reality that you have this dynamic going on with the trauma bonding and the intermittent, what is it called? Intermittent reinforcement. So I'm just going to go ahead and play for you. This is Sam Vaknin. And this is the, what do you call it? There's a documentary that was made about narcissists, and I'm so glad I saw this because, as you know, if you've been watching my channel, I quote Sam Vaknin a lot. Now, I'm taking full responsibility. I had projected onto him something that wasn't there. Because he was so, I think, so accurate in his description of BPD and NPD, what goes on in the mind of cluster Bs. And because he's very clear about things like going no contact and all kinds of other things, I had assumed that he had been in some kind of therapy which resulted in some recovery. Now, I honestly don't know if that's true. But whatever is true, based on this, it's very clear he's not recovered. He's an extremely toxic person if what's shown in this documentary is accurate. Because there's numerous times when he's extremely destructive to people. And he has seemingly no remorse, and he takes no responsibility for it. So he's going to explain from his own mouth what he just did. Now, the lead up to this is he's just unleashed a ton of abuse onto the filmmaker, extremely abusive, to the point where the filmmaker was shaking. He was so traumatized by it. And then afterwards, as they're in the train, you can see the filmmaker there, and you can just look and see. We've all been there. He's trying to keep himself together, but internally he's messed up. And then Sam Vaknin goes in to explain what he had just done to him. And he goes on to explain how to bully somebody. And again, he takes zero responsibility. So let's just go ahead and listen. By the way, forgive me, my dryer's going, so that's what you're hearing in the background. So hopefully you can hear this. So let's just go ahead and listen.
Your body was flooded instantly with adrenaline and its derivatives like norepinephrine and so on. Now, when these hormones pervade the bloodstream, your brain reacts. It shuts down certain centers and activates others. This is called a stress reaction, or stress syndrome, actually. Then when the abuse recedes, the adrenaline levels begin to drop. As they drop, the entire system goes into mayhem. So what bullies usually do, they start and stop, start and stop. That achieves the maximal stress syndrome. And this is the great secret of bullying. Never overdo it. Small doses. The victim will do the rest. Although you are shaking, much less. I must do something about it.
This is classic stuff, typical of a psychopath. I should be happy.
You can't see the filmmaker having just been told that. You can see him just like doing this. I mean, it's just even him, the psychopathic glee that Vaknin was getting by explaining to him under the guise of, yes, this is a film and we're talking about psychopathy and narcissism, but he was getting glee. He was saying, this is what I've just done to you. This is how much power I have over you. And, maybe you heard it at the end. He says, oh, but you're shaking much less. We must do something about that. Like he's being funny and cute, but he's saying, yeah, and so I'm going to keep abusing you. There's another point early on where, because the abuse, Sam Vaknin's abuse escalates throughout the film. And in the beginning, earlier on, if I remember correctly, or maybe it was in the beginning, the filmmaker says something to the effect of, about him being abusive, and Sam Vaknin says, oh, I haven't even begun to abuse you yet. And so I didn't play the actual abuse because it was actually it triggered my PTSD. And it was just verbal abuse. There was nothing about it. But the horrific cruelty and the psychopathic nature of it was very hard for me to watch. So when I first watched this, and this is on YouTube, by the way, all you have to do is just go type in Sam Vaknin narcissism documentary, and you'll find it. And there's a bunch of people have put it on. You'll find it if you want to watch it. But what it did for me was actually very healing, because I became enraged at Vaknin. Enraged. So much so that I started fantasizing about tracking him down and what I would do to him. And I found myself fantasizing about finding Sam Vaknin and putting him in a dungeon somewhere, tying him to a chair and torturing him for days. And, because, I'm not that little kid that I was. Now, I became aware that I was going, man, I'm really indulging in this fantasy, and I don't even know this man. He hasn't done anything to me personally. So there's no reason for me to have this level of rage. Except that I became aware that, oh my God, that is exactly how my brother used to abuse me. My brother, who was 5 years, if he's still alive, I don't even know if he's alive, 5 years older than me when I was a little kid, besides the physical violence, he used to abuse me in that same way. It had the same exact flavor. And what was most telling was the complete lack of remorse. There's no remorse, no awareness. So because I'm not related to Sam Vaknin's not my older brother, I don't know him, because I was able to, and because of my experience with the borderline and the research I've done since I've made this channel, it was obvious he has zero empathy. Zero. And that was the take home, is that, there's nobody home. There's nobody home. He has no awareness of, and no control, as well as all the other judgments we can come up with. He's actually pathetic, and I don't mean that in a put down like you're pathetic. I mean, it actually is quite pathetic. It's pathetic that somebody can be that vacuous inside, so empty, so insecure, and so afraid, because this is the bottom line, so afraid of anybody connecting with you on any level. To have that fear be so great that the only way that you can interact with somebody is through that kind of horrific abuse. Because what Sam Vaknin may not even know, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but it's clear to me now, after having been with a borderline and researched and understood where it comes from. Sam Vaknin does that when he is on the verge of feeling some actual feelings, when he's on the verge of feeling vulnerable and connected. And this thing here I just showed you here was towards the end of the film, where it was clear there was an end date, the film was going to come to an end. I think that Sam Vaknin was going through abandonment issues. I don't think he was conscious of that. All he's conscious of is that he's full of rage and he attacks people. That's all he knows. But what's really going on is that he had bonded with this filmmaker who's actually helping him and helping him learn about himself, and he's going to create this movie about him and, feed his narcissistic ego by putting this movie on, and it's all over the internet, etc., etc. And he couldn't tolerate the thought of feeling abandoned. And so his response to that is to eviscerate the person, so that the person hates you so much, is so frightened of you, hates you so much that when they leave that you can feel justified. Which is, again, the same thing as what borderlines do. When borderlines split, they are psychopaths. They are psychopaths when they split. They have no remorse. Even if they have awareness, that awareness does not give them the ability to stop and change their behavior, which by definition makes them psychopathic. And so this is why my understanding is, in the latest psychological understanding, is that personality disorders are on a scale, and that borderlines are in fact a type of narcissistic personality disorder. It's a different reaction to the same thing. So hearing him explain that, and I mean, I'm tempted to play it again, but I don't, because it's actually traumatic for me to hear him explain it, because I lived it. I lived it as a kid, and I lived it as when I was with my borderline ex. I lived with that. Of course, she abused me differently, but it's the same thing. That and he says it very clearly. You just apportion the abuse out. You get just enough out to cause the trauma, and then you let them do the rest. And you keep repeating that, so that the state that your partner is in a constant state of trauma that they're trying to recover from. And then the borderline or the narcissist then becomes the savior, because they throw out the life-saving buoy. You're drowning in your own falling apart, and then they throw out something to save you, which is they'll be nice to you. They'll say something nice, they'll act of kindness, they'll give you a gift, they'll feign some kind of false, maybe even real remorse, and that gives you hope. But in the actual moment, it's actually it feels like they're saving your life, because you're in trauma. You're in such trauma that you want anybody to come and save you. And so they're there, so they throw out something and you grab onto it. And as you pull yourself up, you get pulled back into their sphere. They abuse you, and then they let you drown a little bit, and then they throw out the lifesaver and pull you back in. And so there becomes this trauma bond with the dopamine and the oxytocin, as opposed to the adrenaline and the other hormones that get stimulated, and you bounce back and forth. And you're never, ever, ever in a state of being able to objectively see what is going on. That's why no contact is absolutely essential. Because if you don't go no contact, you will not get any objectivity, ever. And that's why when people come onto my channel and they want to argue with me back and forth about I'm trying to go no contact and I'm like, that's the first thing you got to do. I don't care. Of course you're going to go through withdrawals, because you've now gotten into this trauma bond where you are wanting that oxytocin, which is, it's there for a reason. If you're in a war zone, right, your life is on the line, and you just survived, a nuclear attack from the enemy, and your fellow soldier reaches out and connects to you, or somebody drags you off the field and starts taking care of your wounds, all of the dopamine and other things that bond you to them kick in. But with the borderline and the narcissist, they're the one that's abusing you, and at the same time, they're the ones that are going to stimulate that. So it creates this addiction, because just the slightest kindness creates such a strong empathic response from you that will bond you to them. This is again why when you're at the police station, there's the bad cop who then has to leave the room, and then the good cop comes in with a cup of coffee. Now, the last thing you need is a cup of coffee or a cigarette, but it's just somebody gave you something that you can self-soothe with. And normally a cup of coffee and a cigarette, yeah, it's okay. But in that moment, after having been somebody tell you you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life if you don't confess, and I'm going to knock your teeth out, the cup of coffee or the cigarette, or somebody saying, hey, I'm your friend, just help us out. Here's some coffee. That you bond so strongly because you're in jeopardy. Your life is in danger. You have this experience that your life is in danger. This is what they do. They threaten your life, which is, borderlines. If you're saying I'm not violent, okay. But when you have bonded emotionally and somebody is so deeply in love with you, at your doing, you have opened up the floodgates. You have connected with them. You have made them feel love. You've had the best love making of your life. You've had pillow talk, and they now feel like there's hope, and you have participated in creating that. Then the next day when you wake up and tell them that they're the worst person that's ever existed and you can never talk to them ever again, the amount of trauma is as if your life is being destroyed. It's a life and death kind of trauma. My borderline ex, when she pulled her crap on me, as she was in her narcissism and her psychopathy, and I went back to get some closure, I said to her, on this day you said this, and the next day you said this, and I just want to know, can you at least understand why that would be so traumatic for me? Her response was, geez, I was just breaking up with you. People do it all the time. So, there are trolls that come on and they'll write that in, gosh, somebody broke up with you. Why don't you just get over it? Because that's not what happened. It was abuse. It was a trauma bond abuse. People break up with people all the time. That's true. And it's painful, but it's not the same. It's not as much of a mind fuck, and it's not such an attack on somebody's feeling of security, because they've already created a scenario where they are the savior. They first put you in danger, where your life is in danger, then they save you. And they become the only one. And this is why you become locked on them. Their opinion of you, whether they love you, the relationship and the hope, it's all in this extremely primitive experience of survival. And so as I saw that, as I said, I became infuriated with Vakman, so much so that I was like having these homicidal fantasies. And I became aware that that's because he reminded me of my brother. Now, what I became aware of just in the past few days is that I still had not accepted that my brother was a psychopath. There was still a part of me that was wanting to take the blame, that was wanting to feel sorry for him, that was wanting to say, oh, he's just a victim, and oh, he's this, and my mom did this to him. And with seeing that, with somebody who I'm not related to, who was doing exactly what my brother used to do, it gave me the awareness to go, my brother's a psychopath. And it's not just me hyperbolizing because I don't like him. He's actually a psychopath. And that's important because that gave me the ability to disconnect. And there was a huge healing that came from that. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything. My mother used to triangulate with him. And the last time I saw them, my mom's dead, but the last time I saw both of them together, my brother did his thing and he came in and he threatened to shoot me, and he was extremely abusive. He blamed me for his physical illness and demanded that I apologize for things I'd never done 10 years earlier. And he pushed my buttons to such a degree that I went supernova on him, which means I got in his face. I'm now much larger than he is, and yelled at him and screamed at him. And then he very dramatically dropped to one knee and grabbed his heart as though he was having a heart attack, so he could be the victim. And I got up and I left, and I said, that's it, I got to go. And I had made the decision I was never going to see either of them ever again. I didn't say that to them. I just made that decision and I left. And when my mother called me, the next day as I'm in the hotel room, trying to recover and not wanting to, not wanting to go follow the instinct, which is, was go find some heroin or something just so I could be out of pain, right? Instead of doing that, my mother calls me, and then she says that I provoked him. She blamed me. She tried to blame me for his psychopathic attack on me. And so they were doing it together. And then it became so clear to me how abusive my childhood was. Now, this was hopefully the last little brick that really showed me my brother, if he's still alive, is a psychopath. He's not just a messed up person. He's a narcissistic psychopath, and he's toxic. And so there's no point in me even wasting any energy having any unresolved feelings, because you can't have closure with psychopaths. There is no closure. That's why those of you who are still trying to figure out and get closure with your borderline, there isn't any. They're not the same. They don't do the same kind of abuse. Sometimes they do. They don't do the same kind of abuse as narcissists. But they are narcissistic. They have a form of narcissistic personality disorder. And they do that intermittent, what is that called? Intermittent, what did I call it? Intermittent reinforcement. They do that in their own way. They create trauma bonds and intermittent reinforcement so that you will constantly be on eggshells, constantly try to please them, constantly be willing to take the blame, constantly shift, and you'll keep going back. No matter how many times they abuse you, if they hoover you back, you'll go back. And so the first step, now we can get to this, is to take full responsibility. Taking responsibility is not victim blaming. Victim blaming is saying to the woman who was sexually assaulted that, well, that's your fault because you're dressed so provocatively, and you're wearing such a tight dress, and you're around these men, and of course so it's your fault. That's victim blaming. Taking full responsibility is then saying, okay, but you chose to be a exotic dancer for a Colombian drug cartel. So you chose to put yourself into the not a very safe place. That's not victim blaming. That's taking full responsibility. Now, that's not always the case, obviously. There's some assaults and some things that happen where somebody isn't, hasn't made some kind of a choice. Going back to the woman who, chose to get back in the car with her abuser. I'm not victim blaming her by saying she chose to get back in that car. She had every opportunity from an objective standpoint to get in somebody else's car and go to the police. The universe had given her an opportunity. She couldn't say, oh, I was afraid of him. He was there. He had a gun to my neck. No, there was 5 guys standing between him and you, and a woman, a lone woman in a car saying, come with me, let's go to the cops. You chose to get back in that car. Why you did it is a whole other reason, but it's not victim blaming to say that you are responsible for the actions that you take. Your ability to take responsibility in the moment may have been severely limited, but the universe doesn't care. The universe will hold you responsible for your actions, for your choices, even if your thinking is impaired. So you must take full responsibility, which means if you don't accept that you are codependent, if you don't buy into that, the chance of your recovery is very little, because you will then stay trauma bonded. Those people who go supernova, the heyokas, the super empaths, who put on their shoulder how they're going to take the narcissist down. Now, I was doing that when I saw this, and I was fantasizing about, and trust me, had I been there, had I physically been there, Sam Vaknin would have been afraid for his life. I'm the last person anybody wants to screw with. I'm the last person you want angry with you. Now that I'm not a little 15-year-old kid who is, always smaller than everybody else. Now I'm 200 pounds weightlifter, martial arts expert. There's a reason all that stuff is there. I'm the last person anybody wants to fuck with. Probably if I was there, though, he wouldn't have done it, because narcissists are cowards. But the point being is that I started fantasizing about going supernova. Going supernova means that you are bonded. If I were there, and I had witnessed that, and it had stimulated me to get into Vaknin's face and flip his glasses off his head and threaten to put his, punch him so hard his teeth came out the back of his head, and why don't you pick on somebody your own size? You can't pull that crap on me, right? If I had done that, even though I might have legitimately frightened him, which there's doubt about that, because narcissists go into a whole, they're not home. He experienced far more of that his childhood, so there's nothing about that would be new to him. But even if he were frightened, it would be a distraction. It would be pleasant. He would enjoy it. When I was a little kid, not a little kid, I was in junior high. And there was a guy, I won't say his name, but there was a guy who later I found out had, forgive me for saying so, he had ended up raping and killing his mother. You can imagine, he must have been horrifically abused. Something was not right with that guy. And to my knowledge, he's still in prison, in an insane asylum. But I got in a fight with him when I was in junior high. And in fact, this tooth, I got a chipped tooth right here. That's him. He elbowed me in the face and chipped my tooth. But I was still really good at intimidating people. And we were both in the office, for getting in trouble for fighting. And I was trying to intimidate him. And I was looking him in the face, and I was telling him I'm going to kill you. Wait till we're done. I'm going to take you outside and I'm going to fuck you up. Right? I was doing my defensive thing to frighten him. And this is what he did. He got off on it. He wasn't trying to then out-intimidate me by showing me it didn't bother him. He was literally laughing because he enjoyed it. He enjoyed being threatened. He enjoyed the threat of physical violence. So you can't win that. You're never going to win with them. They're going to, at the very least, enjoy it. If not, they're going to wait and they're going to, Point is, if you are going supernova on somebody, you are playing the game. You are still giving them negative supply. You're still giving them supply. So those of you super empaths who think that you're going to take down the narcissist and you're going to put them in their place and you're going to, you're not. You're still in the trauma bond. You're still wanting to buy into all of that because you don't want to look at your own codependence. All right, so that's number one. Trauma, taking responsibility is not victim blaming. Two, trauma bonds are real, but they're actually formed in childhood. So I don't know Sam Vaknin. Personally, I have no connection with him. He doesn't even know I exist. But my wanting to go physically take him to task is my trauma bond. It's got nothing to do with him. It's the trauma bond that happened to me when I was, 0 to, whatever. My entire life that I've ever had interactions with my older brother. That trauma bond is still from that. I'm still responding to that old trauma bond. And so when you've been with a narcissist or a borderline and you want to talk to me about what they did to you and how they did it to you and how they manipulated you, how they set you up, how they primed you, there's truth to that. But the truth is none of that would have happened if you hadn't already had that within you. And just because you're not consciously aware, like many people, no shortage of people come on here and say, my parents love me. My parents didn't abuse me. My parents didn't neglect me. No, maybe they didn't physically abuse you. Maybe they didn't scream at you or, threaten you with violence. But there had to have been. There had to have been a contractual love where you had to prove your love. Maybe you needed to get straight A's, or you wouldn't be a good person. It could be that. There's plenty of people who have loving family relationships and they go to Christmas and New Year's Eve and Thanksgiving and, to all of that. But there was still some kind of perfectionism. You weren't loved entirely for who you were, and that created a trauma bond. And so in order to work through that, you sought out a borderline or a narcissist so that you could, in that case, turn up the volume to your feelings of needing to be loved and nurtured to such a degree, you're going to find the person who's completely emotionally unavailable so that you can relive that trauma of not being loved and then finally make it work. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to get them to love me. Number 3, attraction to NPDs or BPDs is heightened by unresolved childhood abuse trauma, which is what I just said. So your attraction to them, the feeling that they're the one during the love bombing phase, they're the one, they're my soulmate. The attraction is heightened in you because of unresolved childhood abuse trauma. Childhood abuse trauma can be as seemingly innocuous as not being loved for being a good enough student, for not picking up your room enough, for not making mommy smile. Daddy's sad today and it's my job to, do something to make him happy. That's enough. Codependence can be that subtle. Now it's going to be deeper than that. You do this over a lifetime and there turns out to be a much deeper thread there. So there's a lot of people that deny that they're codependent. Oh, my mom loves me. Well, that's great. So what about your dad? How did your mom triangulate with you? How was it that your mom loved you but gave you the feeling that it was your job to take care of your dad? I mean, in terms of my brother, I already gave you the scenario. My brother absolutely came out of nowhere. The last time I saw him, literally threatened to shoot me. Said, I've got a gun, I'm going to put it to your head and I'm going to kill you. He did that, and then my mom had the fucking temerity to then say to me that I provoked him. There's nothing anybody can do to provoke somebody to threaten to shoot you. I mean, unless you're threatening to kill them, which of course I wasn't. There was absolutely nothing I could have done to have provoked that response. So she was triangulating. I could have walked away saying, yeah, but my mom loves me, but my brother. But everybody's complicit. If we look at the Karpman triangle, do I still have that here somewhere? I think I do. In terms of, I don't know if I'm a codependent or not. Yeah, there it is. Oh, Karpman triangle doesn't exist anymore. Or wait, maybe it does. Maybe I have to bring it way up here. Let's see. Let's see if I can bring it all the way up here. Let's see if does it exist now? Yeah, there it is. So the Karpman triangle. you're somewhere on this. If you've been with a borderline, you lived somewhere on this triangle. There's the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim. The victim is blameless. The persecutor is right. The rescuer is good. You're somewhere. And the roles change. The abuser will then become the victim. In my case, when I told you about my brother was trying to create that. When I went supernova on him, and I was yelling at him and in his face because he had just done whatever he had done, he then clutched his chest and fell to one knee, pretending he was having a heart attack. He was wanting to go from persecutor to victim. Right? I became the persecutor. When you go supernova, you are going from victim to persecutor. It's a dance. That's why I have no sympathy for the super empaths who talk about going supernova and they want to have some kind of badge. So now you're the narcissistic abuser and this is somehow part of your healing. It's not. You have to take full responsibility. Full responsibility. All right, so let's see what else. The first step to healing step number 3, the first step is acknowledging that you are codependent. Second step is acknowledging, I forgot what second step was, but let's just pretend that I said it and it was really deep and meaningful. Third step is to go no contact. You have to go no contact. You will not be able to see. Here I am now 57 years of age. That experience I just shared with you about my brother and my mom had to have been 10 years ago. Almost that. It's taken me 10 years to come to realize my brother's actually a psychopath. He's not just this messed up guy. He's a psychopath. There was never any awareness on his part. There was never any real empathy. He's a psychopath. And that gives me hope because now I can release myself of any of what my mom was doing to me, which was saying that it's my fault. I provoked him. So the first step to healing is after acknowledging that you are codependent and after acknowledging that number 2, there is no hope. You cannot create a bond with a psychopath. It does not happen. It will not work. With a borderline, any bond you create, they cannot maintain it. In fact, they must destroy it. They have an inner psychopath that must destroy the bond. People ask me, how can I'm working with my girlfriend and, the borderline part of her, we're really making progress. How can I keep that but keep her from turning into a psychopath? You can't. It's two sides of the same coin. There's a heads and a tails. You can't have one without the other. She is a psychopath. She's a secondary psychopath. There is no hope. They will not ever love you or bond you or attach to you. At best, if she's a borderline, at best, after 10 years of therapy, if you're lucky, she might be able to take contrary action to her impulses and prevent her acting out on her psychopathic impulses. But doesn't mean she's going to love you. It doesn't mean that she's going to have any empathy or sympathy for you. She's not going to have what you understand as empathy and sympathy. She won't have it. He won't have it. So the second is you got to realize there's no hope. And then the third is you have to go no contact. Why? Because if you don't go no contact, you will be in that cycle of trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement, which keeps you bonded and traumatized. You'll never be able to have the objectivity to look at it and see what's really going on. So don't even waste your time trying to tell me Well, you don't understand. Well, I'm still with her, but okay, but we're still friends, or we're not dating, or just don't even bother. There's no hope. You're in it. You're in the abuse. Tell yourself whatever you want. You must go completely no contact. No contact means that you block their phone, that you block email, that you block Facebook. You throw away your phone and get a new phone number. You move to another address. You make it impossible for them to contact you. That is no contact. Anything less than that is you waiting for them to hoover you. And the other thing is, you don't have to feel empowered to go no contact. You will go through withdrawals. Just like somebody going cold turkey off of heroin, they're going to go through withdrawals. That's just get used to it. That's what's going to happen. You're going to go through withdrawals. So don't wait until there's the right time. I'm waiting for the right time. There is no right time. There is no right moment. And even if they discard you, you're still bonded to them. This is why I tell people, if you don't do the 3 things, therapy, work the 12 steps, not just go to a CODA meeting, but work the 12 steps, which the 12 steps is the way to destroy the trauma bond. The empaths who make the videos about destroy the narcissist. The way to destroy the narcissist is to work the 12 steps. This is why the 12 steps are so important, because they actually shift the brain chemistry. They shift all that trauma bonding through the dopamine and the oxytocin and the whatever other negative, the other, I forget what they are. Other negative chemicals that go through the body. It's the 12 steps that actually stops that. If you don't do it, that never stops. That's why some of you 10 years later, 2 months later, 6 years later, you're still asking me questions like, do they know that they hurt me? It means trauma bond is still there. Did they ever love me? Trauma bond. Will they ever understand? I just want them to know what they did. Somebody made a comment about that. I saw that Vaknin thing, and I just wanted him to know what it felt like. That's a trauma bond. It tells me you're still bonded to your borderline ex. You guys, listen, I can see it. I can see it in your comments. I'll be able to know. I'll be able to know if you're still bonded. That's why sometimes I respond in ways you don't like, because I'm aggressively trying to reflect your trauma bond. There's nothing okay about it. You haven't seen your borderline in 10 years, but you still ruminate on what you did wrong. You still wonder. You still fantasize about the love bombing. You are trauma bonded. When I tell you that I'm completely healed from my relationship with my borderline ex, I mean it. I'm not completely healed from the trauma of my brother, because Sam Vaknin, watching a film of him abusing somebody else, had enough power to put me into the state of wanting to, physically terrorize him. That means that I'm not fully healed from my original wound of my brother. That's okay. I'm happy to keep doing the work and keep working the steps and keep talking to my therapist and my sponsor and working through all that. The original wound is the one that never truly gets healed. Relationships, you can heal from those. You can heal completely. I have no rumination about my borderline ex. I also have no need, which I did in the beginning, I have no need to go supernova on her. I have no need to get resolution, closure. I already have closure. She's a psychopath. She wasn't there. There was nobody there. She never had that kind of feeling that I have. She never bonded with me the way I bonded with her. She never loved me the way I loved her. And she never will, and she'll never understand to this day. If she were to hear me talk about it, even if she had some guilt or some empathy, she would never truly know what it felt like. Never. That's not her fault. She's broken. There's something broken there. That's the disorder part. There are wires that never got connected. That's what a psychopath is. And that's why there's no hope. So the awareness of abuser's true nature only comes with distance and time. So this is what I'm talking about now. It's taken 57 years for me to realize my brother is a psychopath, that he doesn't have the ability. He would never, ever have the ability to be an older brother. He's broken. It's not there. So there's no need for me to feel guilty. There's no need for me to take any responsibility. You know, the garbage that my mother threw at me that I provoked him. That got in there. That was there up until even right now. That was there in me. I've been feeling sorry for him. My brother's homeless, to my knowledge. I don't know, but to my knowledge, he's homeless if he's alive. And he's refused any help to get off the street. Every program, every opportunity for him to work himself, and get off the street and get a life, he has refused. And I've felt sad for him. I've felt, is there anything I did? No, he's a psychopath. He has done this to himself. And there's zero reason for me to feel sorry for him. But there's also zero reason for me to want to go supernova on him, because it doesn't accomplish anything. Going supernova on somebody is an extreme attempt. It's a narcissistic, psychopathic attempt to get somebody to understand the pain that they've caused you. It's, when I'm fantasizing about, locking Sam Vaknin in a closet somewhere, tying him up to a chair and breaking every one of his fingers until he admits, you're right, I was horrible. That's me wanting to get my brother to acknowledge, yes, I understand, I was hurtful to you and you didn't deserve that. And having him understand it and mean it. It'll never happen. He's broken. That only comes with time and distance. That's why going no contact is essential. You want to, if you go no contact, it's going to take time. It may take you a whole lifetime. With your original abusers, it's probably going to take a whole lifetime. With your ex-boyfriend, ex-husband, ex-girlfriend, it's going to take less time. Depending on how long you were there and depending on how deep your codependence is from your original abuse, it's going to take however long it's going to take. It took me 2 months to heal from my borderline ex for two reasons. Number one, I've been in 12-step groups for 39 years. I've been working the steps for 39 years. I've been in therapy for 25 years. I've been doing spiritual work for almost that long as well. So I have practiced doing the steps. I have practiced doing fourth steps, and the wiring in me goes really fast to make the shift and the healing. So I was only with her for 4 months, and I've been doing this work for 39 years. So it only took me 2 months. That's a long time. It took me 2 months to heal from that 4-month relationship. So those are the reasons why it only took me 2 months. It might take you longer, but you can heal completely from the borderline narcissistic relationship. But you may have to spend a lifetime, I'm sorry to say, healing the trauma bond that was created. And I can't stress this enough. Those 3 things, therapy, the 12 steps, meditation, may literally save your life. Literally save your life. Because I have seen it and I keep seeing it, and I wish it weren't the case, but I'm not going to close my eyes to it, and I'm going to learn from it. People who don't get it, people who don't get that borderlines and narcissists are psychopaths, they will not ever recover. They will never get healed from that. I'm in full agreement with Sam Vaknin that narcissists cannot recover. I'm in full agreement with him. And if you don't get that, the trauma bond can kill you. It can give you a physical disease that can kill you. I've seen it. When I was with my borderline, the first time she started splitting on me, the anxiety within me, because I had been healthy, 38 years of 12-step work, 25 years of therapy. I've been in love and had true, real love. I've had all that. I know what it's like to be a healthy, happy, functioning, self-empowered, self-developed, individuated person. And so when I was wrapped up in the anxiety that in my gut I could feel was causing me physical harm, I was afraid for my physical health, because the hole in my gut, I was afraid it was going to give me cancer. I could feel it because I know the difference. Some of you don't. Some of you have never even begun to address the trauma bond. You've gone from your parents to your first boyfriend to your first husband. Some of you have said, yeah, I've been with 3 borderlines and a narcissist. And some of you have never, ever individuated enough to know the difference. But I can tell you, having been both places, it's deadly. And there isn't anybody special enough. There is nobody special enough who can survive these relationships, unless you're a narcissist or unless you have autism or something else. Borderlines and autists, people with autism get along because there's no real intimacy. There's no real empathy. There's no real vulnerability. You're a codependent. You are the most vulnerable being on the planet. Those relationships can kill you. So I'm as serious as a heart attack about all this. And that's why some of you think I'm victim blaming you, and some of you think I'm attacking you, and some of you think I don't have enough empathy. My empathy for you, my true empathy, which means I'm not emotionally attached to your outcome. You want to go destroy your life with a borderline? Be my guest. Better you than me. That's empathy. I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly what's going on with you, but I have no need to fix you. That's your job. You got to do that for yourself. I have no sympathy for any of you if you don't do the 3 things. I have empathy for you, but I have no sympathy for you. That's your funeral, and it's you doing it to yourself. And I will never stop telling you that. I will never stop telling you that you were with a borderline for 10 years. You kept showing up. That's your job. That you did that. That woman, as damaged as she was, as uneducated and unaware as she was, as wrapped up in the illusion of the trauma bond that she got up off that pavement and chose to walk back into that car. Nobody forced her to do it. She's fully responsible for whatever the hell he must have done to her, because I'm sure he did. He must have been so embarrassed after having all those men stand and tell him, I'll kick the crap out of you. Why don't you pick on somebody your own size? After having attacked a little 15-year-old kid, he almost attacked me. That the shame of that there's no doubt in my mind he took it out on her. She's fully responsible for what happened after that moment. You are fully responsible for what happens to you in and out of the relationship. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. But yeah, seeing Sam Vaknin like that really triggered my PTSD and made me aware of my codependence. I was actually considering contacting him. I was considering contacting him and doing an interview with him on the channel and talking about borderlines and narcissists. That was my codependence. And I don't give a flying fuck how accurate he is in his description of mental health. He is an extremely toxic person. And speaking for myself, I wouldn't have any interaction with him on any level for any amount of money. Extremely toxic person. Based on what I saw in that movie, assuming that movie is accurate, which I believe it is, he's a toxic man, and his awareness means nothing. Nothing. The only thing that matters is recovery. So borderlines listening to me, I'm saying this with the awareness that you may be a psychopath. But if you have the ability to go to therapy and learn how to act contrary to your impulses, then you are in recovery. And if you are in recovery, it doesn't matter if you truly love someone. The only thing that matters is that you act consistently in a loving way. And then you will be a loving, empathic person. It's not the feelings, it's the actions that matter. And if a narcissist had the ability to realize that everything in them, the impulse within them, wants to destroy the other person, if they have the ability to consciously do the opposite, it won't matter that they're a psychopath. It won't matter that they're inauthentic with their feelings, because the person on the other end of it will still be loved and nurtured. The borderline mother. I can think of 2 borderlines that, before I knew they were borderlines, whose mother did not love them. One woman on here left a comment saying that she a borderline, I believe, said that her mom told her that when she was a crying infant, that the mother used to just get in the car and roll up the windows because she just couldn't tolerate listening to her child scream. But if you have the ability to pick up your child who is crying, even though everything in you wants to wring their neck or leave or not talk to them, if you have the ability to act contrary to that, guess what? Your child will grow up healthy. Your child will see you and think that you love them. Action is everything. Sam Vaknin, based on that, at least in those moments, not only had no ability to resist his impulse to attack people, but he had no awareness. He then went on to gaslight them. The next thing he said, which I didn't play, was something to the effect of, and if you are even slightly more intelligent than I give you credit for, you'll listen to what I say and you'll improve your life, which is pure bullshit, and it's 100% gaslighting. Zero responsibility. So he has zero recovery, if that film is accurate. And what this channel is about recovery. Awareness is meaningless without recovery. You can recover if you do those 3 things. You can gain, if you're a codependent, you can gain recovery. You can gain recovery, gain yourself back, be able to find somebody to be loved and to love you back. You can find that. You can heal, slowly heal it. Unfortunately, the borderline and the narcissist will never heal that damage. The best they'll be able to do is act as if, but that's good enough. The sad thing about Vaknin, here's what's sad about him. The sad thing about Vaknin is that his knowledge does have the ability to heal. If he had the ability to resist his impulses, and if he could, even in his most psychopathic states, act lovingly without a selfish, narcissistic agenda, his actions would make him a loving, empathic person. But because he either can't or won't allow himself to believe that, he's going to continue with his narrative, which is that he is a narcissist psychopath that will never heal. And now he's got a justification to abuse people for the rest of his life. And he can write books about it and have a video channel about it and get clients and teach people psychology. That's the sad part about it. That's what makes him sad. And without judgment, that's what makes him pathetic. He's pathetic. Because he has so much ability to be such, he could leave this life with people loving and respecting him. And having seen that, the only thing he's good for is he's good for information. If I want to understand a psychopath, I'm going to go listen to Vaknin. But if I want to recover from the abuse that I've experienced, if I want to recover from my own codependence, which is a mild form of psychopathy. All of you listening to me, if you're codependent, you suffer from a mild form of psychopathy. You don't have a personality disorder. Some of you are bordering on it. Some of you actually are inverted narcissists. But many of you aren't. But you are suffering from an induced form of psychopathy. When you're with your borderline or your narcissist, and at the end of the relationship or in the midst of it, and you're going crazy, and you split on people, and every single one of you who wants to tell me why I'm being too soft on the borderline and I have to hold them responsible, you are in a state of psychopathy when you do that. When you want me to co-sign your judgment of them being evil, you are a psychopath in that moment. You think you have a badge on your chest. You think you're coming from some place of self-righteous awareness. Oh, now I've seen through them. Yeah, they just manipulate you. They just want to do this to you. And they're just this, and you're just their supply. You are a psychopath. You're going supernova. And you've been infected with their psychopathy. So codependence, I'm saying, is a mild form of psychopathy, but it's reversible. The borderline, the narcissist, it's not reversible. And it's really important to know that, I think. I don't think people, because otherwise you'll continue to volunteer for the pain. All right, so I'm done ranting and raving. So you can look at those again. If you want to recover, take full responsibility. Don't give yourself any victim mentality. Take full responsibility for your contribution. Trauma bonds are real. So it is real, the feeling that you can't get out and they have a hold over you, they have put a spell on you. It is real. But those were actually formed earlier in childhood and they've been re-stimulated. Your attraction to narcissists or borderlines is heightened by your unresolved childhood abuse trauma. The first step to real recovery is no contact. And fifth, awareness of the abuser's true nature only comes with distance and time. You will not understand. When I look back at my borderline relationship, I have no illusions. It was, on my end, it was 100% transference and projection. I felt in love with her and I wasn't. Her feelings for me, transference and projection. There was no real loving. There was no bond. We were two people shining our lights in different directions. We never really connected. That only comes through time and distance and healing. All right, so I'm going to take the questions first. Jameson says, question, I'm confused on how awareness of projection is an antidote to being driven by unconscious codependency. Is there a difference between projection and standards for a healthy relationship? Sure, there's a huge difference. But you may not know that. So Jameson, I know you're confused. That's part of recovery. The first part of recovery is you don't know the difference. That's what the 12 steps are about. You go to, in this case, a CODA meeting or whatever you're, a CODA, Al-Anon, ACA, AA, Al-Anon, I don't care. You go to your sponsor and your sponsor tells you what to do. Okay, today you're going to get up and then you're going to brush your teeth. You're going to put on your shoes and socks. You're not going to smoke weed. You're then going to go to your job interview. You're then going to call your sponsor. You're going to go to a meeting. You just do what they tell you to do. And nobody likes to do that. Everybody listening to me is going, oh my God, that sounds like a cult. I'm just telling you. That's how you're fucked up in the head. You're a total nutbag. You're crazy. You don't know right from left. You can't tell the difference between projection and an honest feeling. You don't know what boundaries are. You don't know any of it. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. You're just coming out of it. You've just gone no contact. You're just now coming out of it. You don't have a clue. And it's going to be really painful and frightening, and you're going to want to know, and you won't know. You're going to go, the people that you want to talk to in those meetings, if you ever physically go to a CODA meeting, the old woman who's sitting in the back and she's, macrameing something. The one that sits in the back and never talks. And then the leader will ask, Myrtle, will you talk? And she says, yeah, when I first got here 20 years ago. That's the person you want to go talk to. You'll tell them all the crazy stuff and they'll go, yeah. Mm-hmm. What should I do? Come back to the meeting next week. Don't call your borderline ex. Don't call your parents. And then come back next week. But I want an answer. No, that's the answer. You stay fucked up and you just do what's in front of you. You do what you're told to do. You find somebody that has what you want and you say, how did you do it? And then you do what they say. There are people that come onto this channel, but both of my channels, and they want to argue with me on this channel. They want to argue with me about they don't want to go to CODA. They're not codependent. And I'm like, look, you're on my channel because you want something from me. There's obviously something I have that you want. Well, yeah, you say a lot of good things. Right. So if you want what I have, you probably should do what I'm doing. So I'm going to tell you what I've done. You don't want to do that? That fine. Your misery is yours. Good luck. Well, then he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, if I don't know what I'm talking about, then there's no reason for you to watch my channel. If you're watching my channel because you think I know what I'm talking about, maybe you should listen to what I say. If I tell you that you're a codependent based on what you said, I might have some knowledge about that. If I don't, and you're right, and I'm full of crap, then feel free. There's another channel. Go watch the Heyoka channel. Go watch the Super Empath channel. They'll tell you what you want to hear. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am wrong. So, Jameson, you are confused. You don't know what the hell's going on, and that's exactly where you belong. The only thing that matters is that you've done the right thing. You've gone no contact. And keep doing the right things. The feelings will be whatever they are. Honest feeling. I'm worried that my career motivations in seeking fulfilling healthy relationship will always be guided by projections. They will. They always will. That's okay. There's healthy projection, and then there's, the kind of projections we often have. Every relationship is projection. Everybody that's been married 40 years and has the most beautiful relationship, it started off with 6 to 9 months of pure projection. That's why every relationship at around 6 months or 9 months, they go through a trial breakup or they fight, and then they come to a realization, and then they get married a year later. Or they break up at 6 to 9 months. It's because after 6 to 9 months, the projection fades and you see the person, oh my God, that person, they have some chives in their teeth and their farts smell, and they got freckles in weird places, and oh man, they're human. Ew. I thought this was the angel. No, it's a human being. Ew. You have to learn to love them. The projection fades away and you learn to actually love them for who they are. So every relationship is projection. And you will. There's a good chance you're going to operate from fucked up thoughts. It's part of the process. That's why you have a sponsor. That's why you have a therapist. Right? That's why you have your spiritual practice. So that you can have, this is in case those of you who don't want to go to 12-step groups because you don't want to deal with the God thing. You have to believe in something that's not you. I don't care if it's the ocean, the sky, the Goodyear blimp. I know a guy back in California whose higher power is the Goodyear blimp. A doorknob. It doesn't fucking matter. As long as it's not you. It's got to be something that's greater than you, or knows more, or different than you. And when you turn your will and your life over to that thing, whether it's good orderly direction or the universe or love or the ocean or whatever, when you do that, something chemically happens in the brain. People will say that they feel the presence of God. Maybe that's true. I don't care. Yes or no doesn't matter to me. I do know that something happens in the brain where you get an ability to see things objectively. You have an accurate intuition that tells you what the next step is. It doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't give you the answer to life, but it tells you what your next step should be. This is why you live one day at a time. Jameson, you're not living one day at a time when you're saying, I'm worried that all of my relationships are going to be driven by my projection. We don't care about tomorrow. We only care about today. That's it. Today, is there a woman that you're talking to you want to date? Am I operating from projection right now? Yes, but I'm going to trust the universe to take care of me. Or yes, now I realize I feel this is unhealthy. Whatever. It's one day at a time. There was a time in I remember when I sat there, I was sitting I was 17 years old, and I was sitting in my bedroom on the second floor of our 2-story house. And I had this impulse. It wasn't a feeling. It wasn't a desire. Like in my mind, there was this video of me jumping out of the window head first. And my body was like trying to do it. The impulse was so strong. And I looked at the clock. It was probably the most important time of my life. And I get choked up whenever I talk about it. But there was a little alarm clock. Tick, tick, tick. And I said, I'm going to go 10 seconds and I'm not going to jump out the window. 10 seconds would go by. I went 10 seconds. I didn't jump out the window. I'm going to go another 10 seconds. And pretty soon those 10 seconds turned into 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes turned into an hour. And those hours turned into days. I'm going to go today and I'm not going to jump out the window. This is how it's done. This is the recovery. It's not worrying about next year. Who gives a fuck about next year? Today, I don't want to jump out the window, and I'm going to go 10 minutes. I'm going to go 10 seconds, and I'm not going to jump out the window. Borderlines, you want to split. I'm going to go 10 seconds, and I'm not going to split. Okay, I went 10 seconds, and I didn't split. I'm going to go another 10 seconds. It's that fucking serious. This is why borderlines, you think I don't know what goes on? You don't think I know what it's like for you? I know what it's like. Maybe I don't have the exact same issue that you do, but I'm real fucking close. I know exactly what it feels like. That's why I have so much compassion for them. That's why I talk about them when I'm talking about them, how horrible it is. I know what that feels like. And I'd like to believe, and the jury's out on this, but I'd like to believe that narcissists and borderlines, if they could do that, take contrary action. I'm going to go 10 seconds and I'm not going to jump out the window. I'm going to go 10 seconds and I'm not going to yell at that person. I'm not going to destroy the relationship. I'm not going to go, have sex with, a football team. I'm not going to slam heroin in my neck. Whatever the fuck it is. I think that's the cure. That's where it starts. All right, what else? Looking for the questions. Tanisha Lulu question. What about narcissistic borderline mothers? You have to actually write the question. That's not a question. So forgive me, you have to write a question with a subject and an object and a verb. That's not a question. If you have a question about borderline narcissistic mothers, write out the full question so I can help you. Okay? 2 most important things in life: paying attention and putting effort. You didn't put effort in that. Put some effort into that question and I'll be happy to help you. Why? Because I care about you. I want you to actually care about your question. You're important. You're worth it. You deserve to get an answer to your question, which means you deserve to have the time from me while I give you the space to listen to your whole question. Have love and respect for yourself. Write out a full question and I'll do what I can to help you. Take no prisoners question. My My borderline ex often talks about herself and all her issues. Well, what do you mean? First off, you haven't gone no contact. Because she's your ex, but she often talks. So there's the problem. If you watch the whole video, there's no way for you to have the slightest fucking clue what's going on if you are still trauma bonded. And you are, because you haven't gone no contact. Question. My borderline ex often talks about herself and all her issues. She rarely asks how my day was or anything about me. Is this a sign of narcissism? Did you hear anything I said? Have you listened to anything I've said? Your narcissism is such that you're not hearing me. There's no hope. She's broken. She does not care about you the way you want. And you, in your narcissism, won't see that. Go no contact. Do the 3 things. I know you haven't gone no contact, and I know you haven't done the 3 things, which means what? I have no sympathy for you. I have no sympathy for your pain. I empathize, but I'm handing you the pill. I'm handing you the antibiotic, and you haven't taken it. And now, you're filled with some viral or some bacterial infection. There's pus coming out of the sides of your eyes. I gave you the antibiotic yesterday, and you're sitting there looking at it, and you're wanting to then, so is the pus coming out of the sides of my eyes? Is that going to go away? Or should I take some aspirin? Maybe if I get some more sunlight. I gave you the fucking antibiotic already. I told you to go no contact. I told you to do those 3 things. And you want to ask me about what your fucking borderline, who has a mental disorder, you want to ask me about what she's thinking? It's meaningless. It doesn't matter. Forgive me. Your feelings matter, but your question is meaningless. She does this, this, and this. Is this a sign of narcissism? You just told me she was a borderline. Why? It's like saying, my drug-addicted boyfriend takes drugs. Does that mean he's a drug addict? Look at your question. This shows how crazy we get, how your codependence makes you stupid. You can't even see what's right in front of you. So there's no point if I say to you, yeah, that's a sign of narcissism, how does that help you? If I say, no, that's not a sign of narcissism, how does that help you? What answer could I possibly give to that question that's going to help you get into recovery, fix the problem? Nothing. It's a waste of time. Get the hell out. Go no contact, do the 3 things and heal. And then you won't care. What else? Tanisha Lulu. So take no prisoners. I hope you can hear that. I'm not trying to attack you. It's just, you want the fucking bitter medicine, you want the pill, you got to actually swallow the pill. You don't have to like it. But if you want to heal, in my experience, assuming I have some awareness, some knowledge, which may or may not be the case, that's how I understand it. Tanisha Lulu question, Mike, what I find hard to understand is how the first 2 years of our life can determine the rest of our life. It's so bizarre because we don't remember any part of being 2 to 3 years old. So Tanisha Lulu, you're not being completely honest with yourself. Of course you understand how it works. You don't like the idea. You don't remember being 2 to 3 years old. And you're saying that it's tough because you have no power. Wanting to understand is wanting to have power. And infants and 2-year-olds don't have any power. So you need to accept that what you say, I don't understand or hard to understand, is your fear of accepting your powerlessness. You were powerless. And what do you mean it's hard to understand? An infant whose brain is not developed, whose psyche hasn't been developed, is being trained and programmed by their parents. If the parents are narcissists and borderlines, guess what happens? they create narcissists and borderlines. If your parents are individuated and healthy, they create healthy people. And when they're first being formed. Why is that hard to understand? It isn't hard to understand. You know exactly what it is. You don't like it. That's something else. It's too bad. I don't remember being too... the one thing I know about myself, because I was told by my family, was that I was born premature. I was born, I don't know what it was, at least 90 days. I mean, like, I was born so early that the doctors were telling me I was going to die. Not telling me, I'm telling my parents that I was going to die. And back in 1963, the fucking idiots that they were, they took a premature baby and stuck it in empty fish tank. That's their solution. Their solution is to take the premature baby and completely disconnect it from any human contact and flood it with oxygen. So, I mean, no wonder. And to this day, if I see a baby in one of those those incubators, I feel a physical shock. It's really traumatic. I don't have any memory of it, but clearly my body does. It must have been I think about it, it makes me really sad. It must have been incredibly traumatic for me. It's amazing I didn't become a borderline. So that's not hard to understand. You understand, you just don't like it. And it's sad. This is where spirituality for me kicks in. In order for me to make it make sense, I have to assume that my soul chose that challenge based on karmic lessons I wanted to learn. Otherwise, the universe is cruel, and I can't tolerate the thought of living in a cruel, irrational universe. So in order for me to survive, I adopt the spiritual belief that it was my choice, that my soul chose to come and experience that. Everybody who's got Sam Vaknin, my brother, my borderline ex, they chose to have whatever challenges. They chose to be borderline or narcissist. They chose to have their experiences. I chose to have them in my life. I chose my parents so that I could learn from that. Because if I don't, then this universe makes no sense. And I can't tolerate that. When it comes to spirituality, like people about that, like the 12 steps about the whole God thing, whether God exists, I could care less if God exists or not. Or I don't believe in God, whatever your higher power of choice is. I don't care whether they exist or not. The only thing I care about is if it makes my life better. That's it. And if believing in karma makes my life better, I'm going to believe it. What else? Somebody in a script I don't understand. Why are you ignoring my comments? It's real simple. I don't respond to comments. I respond to questions. You're new to my channel, so welcome to my channel. I don't, people want to read your comment, they can. If you have a question for me, which is an honest question, the two things I want, forgive me for not saying it. I normally do. I didn't this time. I want either your honest question or your honest feeling. So you'll see people have in all caps question, and then they've written a question. And then there are other people who have written honest feeling, and they share a feeling. So normally, if you throw out a comment, it actually puts a target on you, and I'll start psychoanalyzing you. Because usually when people throw out comments, it's them operating from their ego. So, but I often don't respond to comments. Did I answer your question? So now you know. If you want to interact with me, ask me a question or share an honest feeling. Steve P. Let's see, what else? He says, in your very first Vaknin video 5 months ago, I commented his videos. All right, so what's the point of that, Steve? You were saying that? Did Vaknin say that? Or is this your take on it? I mean, like that, somebody drops a comment, I'm not necessarily going to take it. It wouldn't have mattered to me. That intellectual disclaimer, which is you're giving Vaknin a disclaimer. You're saying, in my very first Vaknin video 5 months ago, you commented his videos are good for factual information, but not for recovery, as he has a personality disorder that cannot be cured. First off, I didn't ask for that. I've now come to that conclusion in the way that was most helpful for me. But, that's coming from you. That's coming from you, your need to whatever. I appreciate it, but even with that, it still doesn't change anything. I'm still, and I have up until this point, I've used Vaknin not for recovery, because he doesn't talk about recovery. He talks about psychology, and he talks about himself. And it's very revealing and very helpful. That was my projection onto him. So in terms of watching him, I'm not going to stop watching him. I'm going to see him differently. And, the desire that I had, that I thought, hey, maybe I should interview him on the channel. Hey, maybe I should reach out to him and have a session with him. That's gone. Because he's toxic. And I can't speak for anybody else. I won't ever interact with him knowingly, because he's toxic. And, that just because he can put on the facade of the psychologist, and he can very accurately, when he's got the camera on him and he's in his, in his best behavior, and put on that facade. That's what's dangerous about borderlines and narcissists, borderlines especially, because they can put on the facade. Now, the facade isn't fake. It's not a fake mask. It's not a conscious lie. My borderline ex would have been a tremendous psychiatrist. She knew how to get into me and pull my feelings out and help me to become consciously aware of things. The difference is she's toxic. She would then bring that up and then stick her claws in there and use it to make me more connected and vulnerable to her. And then, of course, she would split on me, and that would cause me damage. That's what's toxic about them. So Vaknin is a genius. And if you want to understand borderlines and narcissists, go listen to him. And then don't take it any further than that. The understandable presumption, which I don't know, I'm not blaming him. I don't think he's ever said that, hey, you should work with me. I'm this recovered hero. In fact, he says the opposite about himself. He says that he's very clear that he's not recovered. He calls himself aware. He's aware of what he does. But what I saw was somebody who had was putting zero effort into controlling himself. Zero. And for that, I can't help but feel that there's a part of him that chooses to use his admission, his awareness, for his own narcissistic selfishness. And for that, I have no respect. Whatever respect I had for him is gone. But that was my own projection. I was projecting onto him. But at the same time, it wasn't irrational of me, because somebody who wasn't narcissistic, if they had that level of awareness, would have also had a level of recovery. So in me, my awareness of it is also tied to my recovery, because my awareness, and when I psychoanalyze people, and I'm usually right, it's because I've done the work on myself to recover and heal, and that's, knowing my unconscious motivations through my recovery gives me the ability to do that, hopefully, maybe I'm wrong, hopefully in a way that helps people recover. Sam Vaknin, there's no recovery in Sam Vaknin. So therefore, he can't give anybody recovery. I cut it off, but his gaslighting of the filmmaker was, he said, if you have half as much, or if you have, as much or if you have, a tiny bit more intelligence that I give you credit for, when you get home, you'll sit down and think about what I've told you, and then you'll apply it and you'll improve your life, which is his narcissistic way of saying, I hope you ruminate about the damage I've done to you. And my gaslighting you is to tell you that I'm doing it for your benefit. And there isn't any. There's no benefit in that. It's toxic and damaging and destructive. And so there's a difference. So, Steve, I appreciate that, but yeah, you were right about that. I'll give that to you. You were accurate about that. In my naivete, was projecting my experience. For me to have the level of awareness that Sam Vaknin has would mean that I would have had to go through that amount of recovery. I'm a borderline. I mean, I'm not a borderline. Freudian slip. I'm a codependent. So for me to have that level of awareness means that I have to do that much recovery work. My borderline was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant at revealing, like Sam Vaknin. She could sit there and look you in the face and tell you exactly why she did what she did and what the psychological things were. But the problem is, you think, if you're on the other side of that, you think, oh, she knows now, her behavior is going to change. But it's not real awareness. It is superficial. And it's intellectual. There's no emotions attached to it. By the time I get to the place and I tell you intellectually, here's what this is and here's what that is, there has been this whole months or years of me blubbering through tears and experiencing this and changing that. There's a recovery process that's associated with my awareness. What Vaknin calls transformative. He's absolutely right. He says that narcissists have awareness, but it's not transformative. And transformative is what I mean by recovery. And there was one thing he said, I'll repeat it, I said it before, but he said that and maybe not him, that narcissists are aware of everything they do, but their awareness has no transformative ability. And he says they understand what they've done, but they don't understand the motives. And then he went on to say, but who does? Maybe psychologists, to which I immediately responded to the screen. I said, I do. He says, who knows their motives? I do. Maybe not all of my motives, the stuff I haven't learned yet, the growth I haven't had yet. But up until now, I know exactly what my motives were. I know what my unconscious agendas were. So what he's saying is that he's completely unconscious, and I totally agree with him. For somebody to do that kind of damage to another person and not take any responsibility and not have any ability to stop themselves, they're completely unconscious. He has no idea why he does what he does. Even when he comes out and says, oh, I'm doing it, at one point, when he's attacking the guy and the guy's saying, I don't like doing this, Sam Vaknin, on his way up after, attacking him and, eviscerating him, he says, I'm doing this to manipulate you to make the film that I want. As though he's kind of, I could see that he thought he was showing some kind of, awareness, and there was no awareness in that. Just like when he was saying, explaining how a bully, creates damage. He was doing it. There was sort of this feeling of, and now I'm giving you something helpful for your film. And here's what so I'm really helping you. But there's no help in any of that. He was enjoying it. Yeah, he's a psychopath. A very destructive, toxic psychopath. Let's see what else. Jameson question, what is healthy projection? Stop, Jameson, it's time to stop. Stop trying to be perfect. This is your thing. Just stop. You have projection. There is no such thing as healthy or unhealthy projection. There is just projection. There's healthy or unhealthy actions that you take as a result of your projection. Just be human. I love you exactly the way you are. And I love you with your projections. Now you love yourself with your projections. Stop trying to be perfect. That's your mom. Your mom told you you had to be perfect. I'm not telling you that. The universe isn't telling you that. Just be yourself. Is there a good rule of thumb when to think of dating? AA, in AA, they say don't date for a year. Coda has been looser with no clear guidance. One day at a time. Can't talk to anyone if I don't. This is why you talk to your therapist and your sponsor. And you come up with something that's healthy for you. I don't know what's a good rule of thumb for you. Maybe take the AA rule. If it works in AA, maybe it'll work in Coda. Don't date for a year. What have you got to lose? You've got a year of working on yourself. What else? Take no prisoners. Question: are there any success stories with people? I've heard of I use 10 years. I say, often if it, at best, if they get therapy for 10 years. I got that from a borderline in recovery. And so based on what that borderline told me, I believe her. She wasn't the only person. Other people have thrown out 10 years. There has been success stories. Now I just realized you got past my filter. Why are you asking that question? I'll tell you why. Because you haven't gone no contact and you want to heal your borderline. You want to get your borderline into therapy so that you can siphon off of the love. In your mind, she'll get into therapy and she'll, instead of hurt you, she will love bomb you. But if she gets into therapy and it were to immediately take effect, which it wouldn't, which in your fantasy, how do I know that? Because I had the same fantasy. You think you're going to get them into therapy and they're going to immediately start to get better and they're going to start to love bomb you. But guess what's going to happen? If they get 10 years of therapy under their belt and they recover, they're going to stop love bombing while they stop splitting, which means you will become aware that what you think is love is your projection. You don't realize how selfish you are. You want her to love bomb you. You don't want her to get healthy. If she was healthy, you wouldn't be attracted to her. You would run because you are still in the trauma bond. You are still wrapped up in your codependence. That's why you asked me, is there any success stories with people with... You didn't ask me like Jameson is asking me. Jameson, you're a good boy. I'm going to give you a pat on the back. Jameson is asking me questions about his recovery. You're asking me about how to fix your borderline so you can keep your supply coming. You can keep your codependent, narcissistic supply. We talk about narcissists and borderlines having supply, narcissistic supply. So do codependents. Your narcissistic supply is when they love bomb you. That's destructive. There's nothing in that question about your borderline ex getting healthy. It's all wrapped up in your selfishness. How do I know? Because I've been there. It seems like there's a lot of destruction and drama, but not enough positive stories about being in a relationship. Again, where the hell have you been? How is it you haven't heard me tell you? There's no hope. There's no hope. If you're with a borderline, it's never going to work, ever. They will always hurt you. And each time they hurt you, it will be worse than the last. And just before they hurt you, you will think that things are better than they've ever been. That's what will happen every single time. She will hurt you. She will She'll hoover you back, maybe with promises, mine did, of going to therapy. You will then talk to her about, you did this and you hurt me this way. And she'll say, I know it's because my dad this, and I realize it's because I'm afraid of being hurt. I see now that you do that, and you're going to go, oh my God, she finally sees me. We're almost there. Oh my God, we're almost there. It's almost over. The danger's almost gone. I'm finally going to get loved. It's going to be okay. What do you mean I'm the worst person? Why are you fucking that guy right in front of me and sending me a video about it? What do you mean you'll never, like, you can't talk to me again? It's never going to end. You take no prisoners. You are lost in your codependence. You are high right now. You are high off of whatever it is, dopamine, oxytocin, and whatever the negative ones are. You don't have you can't even hear me when I tell you. You don't even see the abuse that's coming from me because you can't hear what I'm saying. There's no hope. How many more? I mean, do I need to give you how many more 10 steps? You know, how many more little pictures of the 10 steps do I need to? Trauma bonds. They're real, but they're formed in childhood. Attraction to BPD is heightened by unresolved childhood. First step to recovery is no contact. Awareness of abuser's true nature only comes with distance and time. That's what I've been talking about. How is it that you asked a question on that video and you don't even remember that I've been saying that this whole time? So I'm not personally trying to attack you. I'm just trying to show. I'm trying to put the mirror. I want you to see how messed up you are. You're totally wrapped up and clueless. You're welcome to, this is why. Go to click the join button. I don't have the join button on here. Click the join button. Watch those videos. Do the 3 things. Do you want me to write them down? The 3 things, I'll repeat them as often as I want. First one is therapy. Are you in therapy? I doubt it. Number 2, work the 12 steps of coda.org. Have you done that? I feel pretty confident you haven't. 3, daily meditation. Well, should I add a 4th one? 4, no contact. I feel pretty confident you haven't done any of those. So if you haven't done any of those, your questions are always going to get this response from me. Why? Because you're gonna be coming from you're high. You're literally not in reality right now. You're in the haze of codependence. You don't have the first clue what the hell's going on. All right, what else? So I can't tell that script. It's like an Arabic script. So you have to write the word question. Okay, otherwise I won't see it. The whole point is there's a bunch of people there. People drop their comments. I scroll past them. If you don't do the guy above you, take no prisoners, writes the words question in all caps. I can't see it. But let's see. You say, my question was about the woman who got pushed off the car. I don't think it was her. That wasn't a question. First off, you didn't ask a question. You made the statement. I saw the statement and I scrolled past it. That's not a question. And you're not asking me a question. You're giving me your opinion. She says, you say, my question was about the woman who got pushed off the car. I don't think it was her choice because she's traumatized. So my question, can she get another chance? So again, you weren't listening to me. It was her choice. What I'm hearing in your question is you feel you want me to give you permission to continue to make bad choices, even though your thinking is limited because of your stress, right? Because of your trauma. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give you permission to justify to yourself that you didn't have any choice in the things that you did. As true as that is, she did have a choice. It may have been extremely difficult, but she wasn't willing to resist her codependent impulse to get back in the car. It was still her choice. Just because it was difficult doesn't take away her responsibility. So I'm not going to take away your responsibility, because if you watched the video from the beginning, maybe you didn't, but if you did, I say taking full responsibility is the first thing that must be done if you are to heal. Taking responsibility is not victim blaming. You must take full responsibility. I love that woman. I don't know if she's still alive. That was, again, I'm 57, so that was what, 42 years ago? Who knows if she's still alive. I love that woman, and I want nothing but good things for her. But I love her so much that I will not co-sign her victimhood. Everybody can choose to heal. It's the most difficult thing. Did you hear me talk about, I was looking at the clock and I would take 10 seconds at a time. And you weren't there. Maybe you feel it, maybe you don't. But trust me, that was the most difficult 10 seconds of my life. Everything in me wanted to jump out that window head first. There's never been a choice that has been more difficult in my life than not jumping out the window those 10 seconds. Each 10 seconds gets a little easier. The second 10 seconds were almost as hard. The third 10 seconds were almost as hard. It got a little bit easier. So there's nobody on this planet, not Sam Vaknin, nobody, that can look me in the face and say, it's not my fault. Nobody. Bullshit. It might have been incredibly difficult. It might have been worse than death. Not jumping out that window was worse than death for me. I was in hell. And I said, I'm going to go 10 seconds. I'm not going to jump out that window. So it was her choice. Just because she's traumatized, I'm not going to give that to her. Because if I do, what does that say? Oh, she couldn't help herself. She was traumatized. So does that mean you're going to say that every time a narcissist commits murder, rape, incest? Well, they couldn't help it. No, they're traumatized. They could help it. Might have been the most difficult thing they've ever done in their life. It might have killed them. Might have literally killed them. They still had a choice. So I'm not going to co-sign that for you. Let's see, Mike, I commented that in the video because you asked me if I found his content accurate or not. Okay, so that was a long time ago. So my apologies. I did ask you that, I remember. Sorry I didn't explain that because I ran out of words. That's the difficult thing about doing. This is why I only want questions and honest feelings, because it's so hard to be able to communicate fully, by text. It's a horrible way to communicate. So my apologies, I didn't hear that. All right, so Stefan Doshen, welcome to the channel. You have to write the word question on my question and answer. And you do have a question there. You say, I broke up with my ex 6 months ago. I don't know if she cheated on me, but I know that the next day she was in another relationship. She lied and manipulated me. Now I hate her, but also love. What to do? Scroll back or scroll down beneath your question and you see 4 things. 1, therapy. 2, work the 12 steps of coda.org. 3, daily meditation and have no contact. I can't be any clearer than that. And then have all of your thoughts and your feelings. Tanisha Lulu, do you want to ask a question? That's not an honest question, is it? Are there any healthy people nowadays? Yeah, of course there are. Just because you don't feel healthy you don't need to project that on the world. I understand that. I do that myself. No, there are plenty of happy, healthy people. I love where I live, by the way. I escaped California just before COVID, not on purpose. I just wanted to spend some time in Australia. I've been here for almost 2 years. Thankfully, I was here when COVID hit, and so I've been begging, don't send me back to the States. And my visa is good up until the end of the year. I love it here. This little town that I live in, people are so happy. The happiest little kids I've ever seen on the beach, the happiest dogs. People are so nice. There's so many wonderful people in the world. But this is called projection. You globalize. It's a good word. You globalize your personal feelings. You don't feel healthy. You've had unhealthy relationships, and so in your narcissism, you globalize. This is what QAnon is. This was those people who stormed the Capitol. They were all projecting their fucked up shit on the rest of the world and on the rest of the government. This is globalizing your pain. So yes, of course there are. If you do the 4 things, guess what will happen? You will start to get healthy, and guess what will happen? You'll start to see healthy people. You'll start attracting healthy people. Yeah, you'll see all the fucked up people too. But yeah, there's beautiful people in the world. All right, so again, I don't know your name. Welcome to my channel. I'm not going to argue with you. You want to tell me that it's okay. So you want to make the distinction. This is the last time I'm going to interact with you. If you want to interact with me from here on out, you got to ask an honest question or share an honest feeling. But this is the last time. But I'm going to indulge you here because you're new to the channel, and I'm going to indulge this. You say, no, it's different to hurt others. You have choice in hurting others. So you don't understand something really important. When you hurt yourself, you hurt everybody else in the universe. All conscious life is damaged when you don't take responsibility and you choose to get back in that car. You choose to get back in that car because it's too painful or too difficult, and you want to give yourself the excuse because you've been traumatized, and it is. Your whole brain and your body and all of your chemicals in your body are telling you to get back in the car. And yes, your ability to think clearly is severely limited. You want me to co-sign that and say, oh, that's different. There is no difference in the mind of the abuser and the person who volunteers for abuse. The same processes are going on. The person who is doing the abuse thinks that they have the right to do it. The person who is getting back in the car thinks that that is something that they need to do. So you don't see how incredibly damaging your statement is. No, it's different to hurt others because then magically somehow you have the choice. What makes you think that they're operating from sanity? They're insane. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They were abused and damaged. Why do you think they're abusing now? Somebody abused them. They didn't make the choice to heal, and so guess what? They're now damaging others. Whenever somebody chooses to be damaged, this is why I have no sympathy for the super empaths. I have no sympathy for them. In fact, you can hear the aggression in my voice because every single one of the heyokas who goes on there and talks about being a super empath and going supernova and justifies their codependent, narcissistic, psychopathic rage, they don't realize how much damage they do to the rest of the world. And they don't realize how abusive they are to other people. Codependents are abusive. We're talking about Sam Vaknin, but his extremely codependent wife is abusive to him. She abuses him. He's talked about it. She talked about it in there. Somebody else was talking about, that borders on abuse. It doesn't border on abuse. She'll do something about, make a rule about how he cannot move the fucking towel for 1 year. That's her only way of getting control. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You can be damn sure she abuses him in all kinds of ways. So you want me to give you a double standard, that it's okay for the victim. The victim can opt out on their own health and healing, and that's okay. But the victimizer, no, that's different. You don't understand, I can't read your name, you don't understand how much you hurt people with your self-abuse. It's self-abuse. When that woman got back in the car, she was abusing herself out of her shame. Yes, she was trained that way. She was programmed that way as a child. She was with an abuser, but she was addicted to that. It's more painful for her to have gone to the police station and sit with her feelings. That would have been far more painful than what it was to get back in the car. She took the easy way out. So welcome to my channel. You don't understand this yet. I understand that. But I'm not going to co-sign your victimhood. So I hope you stay and I hope you learn. And I've got right above your statement. No, it's different. Others, I've got the 4 things. I'm assuming you're here because you've been abused. Do those 4 things, and then I'll have some sympathy for you, and you get to heal, and you'll get to see what your responsibility was. But this is the thing about codependence. Codependents are choosing to live unconsciously out of a survival mechanism, but they don't realize how damaging it is to other people. So I'm never going to co-sign that for you. You ask, can she get another chance? Yep. Go right above. There's 4 things. Therapy, work the 12 steps of CODA, daily meditation, no contact with the abuser. That's your second chance. Yeah, you have in every single moment you have the opportunity to take action towards your greatest good. Maybe the most difficult thing you've ever done. Those 10 seconds of not jumping out the window, worst fucking experience of my life. I hope I never feel that. I hope no being in the universe ever feels what I felt. That was the worst time of my life. Everybody has an opportunity. Let's see. Steven said 1 in 4 step I did. Well, that doesn't work. It's not enough. You got to take the full antibiotic. Why? I mean, why? Why would you only do 1 in 4? The first one is the most expensive. The other 3 are completely free. Why would you consciously choose not to do the other? CODA is free. Meditation is free. The other 2 steps. It's because you're not, it's one thing if you don't know any better. There are people out there that don't know. They only know step 1. Or maybe if they're lucky, step 4. They don't know the other ones. You don't have that excuse. You've been watching my channel. I've told you. Maybe this is your first time. If this is your first time, forgive me. Now you know. In my experience, assuming I'm right, you got to do all of those things. You don't do all of them, there's a good chance it won't stick. Or you'll get a partial recovery. You want a full recovery. You got to take antibiotics, right? It's like saying, yeah, I got a bottle of antibiotics and I took one every other day until it was about half gone, and then I stopped because I started feeling better. Doctor's going to go, what the hell's wrong with you? Now I got to put you on a whole nother antibiotic. You have to take every single dose until it's gone. You got to wipe the thing out. You got to do all 4 of those. In my experience, take it for what it's worth. But I still feel love for her and don't know how to turn off that feeling. Who said you were supposed to turn the feeling off? Go and find anywhere in any of my videos or in this video where I told you you're supposed to turn your feelings off. The 10 seconds I didn't jump out the window, the feeling didn't go away. The feelings aren't going to go away. This is what everybody needs to understand. It's action that the universe cares about, not your feelings. Your feelings are important. You should have them. And I hope that everybody has beautiful feelings all the time. But that's not the way life works. Life is full of really fucked up feelings, especially if you've been damaged. The universe doesn't care. The universe doesn't care that Sam Vaknin is aware of his psychopathy. If there is such a thing as karma, he's racking it up. Because his actions are all fucked up. It's a very destructive person. No, Stefan, that's not true. Did you go to coda.org? You're on the internet. Coda.org there are live streaming meetings. So it tells me you didn't put the effort to find that out. You don't have to physically go to a meeting. There are Zoom meetings that you can go to. So forgive me, but please don't try and shove that bullshit down my throat. It's anywhere in the world, if you have internet, you can go to a CODA meeting and you can work the steps. Somebody will sponsor you virtually through the internet. So sorry, I'm not going to co-sign your nonsense there. Anyway, so you're not supposed to turn off your feelings. You're supposed to have them and take contrary action. And the steps will change your brain chemistry, and eventually you will stop loving her. You'll see her for what she really is. You'll see yourself for who you really are. And you'll go, wow, that wasn't love at all. You think it is now, but it's not. And if you do the work, you can find that out. All right, so this was an intense one for me, and I take responsibility for that because I did. I mean, just hearing Vaknin do that, even just playing that one part of the video, it really triggers my PTSD. So I had a lot of feelings behind what I was doing today. What else? So that's the deal. If you want a coaching session, you can go to freedom.thunderwizard.com. You can go there and see what's up. Click the join button on the channel. You can have access to members-only videos where you can learn what I do to heal. Sorry, I'm starting to space out here. Somebody just dropped in a question before I left. Question: my borderline ex told me the only thing that matters is the first 3 words after the word question. My borderline ex. I mean, she has a personality disorder. She has a mental illness. And why are you bothering to tell me what somebody with a personality disorder and why does it matter what she says? It means you don't understand what borderline personality disorder means. It doesn't mean really nice but emotionally frail person who sometimes acts out said, well, then you want to find out what she said because then it might have some rationality to it. Once you use the word borderline, then everything that she has said to you is coming from a psychopath. There's nothing rational. There's no awareness. So who gives a shit what she said? It means you're not doing your job. You say, she was sexually abused as a child and was raped by her ex too. I don't believe it's true because borderlines lie. Am I wrong to doubt her? Who fucking cares? You are wrong to give a shit. Your question is coming. Number one, I have reactions to both. What do you mean you don't believe it's true? Somebody says they were raped and you don't believe her? That's really abusive. Your narcissism, you don't want to believe when somebody said something tragic happened to them. Maybe it did, maybe she didn't. Maybe she wasn't raped, but because she has a personality disorder, she remembers things wrong, or she made it up, or she dreamt it. They don't know the difference sometimes. Why? Because they have a personality disorder. Why are you even listening to what somebody with a personality disorder is telling you? And why are you wanting me to link up with you and now you want me to point fingers at her? You know, a damaged person, somebody who suffers tremendously with a personality disorder. You want me to link arms with you and gang up with you and say, yeah, she was lying to you. Why are you that's abusive. Why are you wanting to abuse her? She's your ex. Leave her the fuck alone. Who cares? You want me to tell you, yeah, she was manipulating you. I have no idea what she was doing. Am I wrong to doubt her? really, forgive me for saying so, but incredibly codependent. And codependence means you're coming from your selfishness. All of this question is about you want her back. Why did she tell me that? Because when she told you she was abused and raped, that pushed you away. And that's what hurts you. You're not even giving a shit. You're not even saying, oh my God, that's horrible. That's so horrible that she believes that or thought that. You're so lost in the trauma bond that you want your thing. You know, why would you want to even be with somebody that you didn't believe? If you really can't tell what she's saying is the truth or not, why are you even thinking about her? Now, I know the reason why, but I'm reflecting back to you. A healthy person would be like, man, dude, she was insane. Who gives a shit? I mean, I don't know if anything was true. I just know that she was bad news for me. And you're not. You're trying to figure out. And your desire to figure her out is trying to get her back. You want to take her hostage and make her love you. And you think if you can figure out when she's lying and when she's telling the truth, you'll finally get her back. You don't know that, but that's what's driving this question. It means you need help. It means you need therapy, CODA, no contact. You haven't done any of those things. I can tell. Let's see what else. Tanisha says, again, Tanisha, you know the rules. Why are you testing me? Why are you abusing me this way? You know the rules. Write the word question. So next time, if I remember and you don't write the word question, I'm not going to respond. And so I do that so that I can see your question. You say, why is it that codependence can potentially heal whereas borderlines can't? Because the fact that borderlines have a personality disorder. What we see in the video with Sam is that you can see in his brain that his brain isn't functioning. He doesn't have emotional regulation. And in some cases doesn't have any emotion. He's broken. But they feel, and maybe they've proven it, I don't know which, but it's a belief that there's a genetic predisposition to BPD, which means that, chemically and in the brain, stress, infantile stress can snap, the brain stops working. So borderlines their brains don't function the way non-borderlines do, which has everything to do with processing, cognition, and emotions. So you can't heal that. That's never going to get healed. The only thing they can do in the recovery is learn how to manage their symptoms. So I don't know, Tanisha, if you're a borderline or not, if that's why you're asking. So that's, borderlines, there does seem to be, from what I've seen, there does seem to be some evidence that they have the ability to monitor their behavior, which means they don't ever stop being a borderline. They just, they go 10 seconds and they do the opposite of everything that's all their impulses are telling them to do. People who are codependents they're this far away from being borderlines. They're failed borderlines. They have a lot of borderline tendencies. But their brain isn't broken. There isn't that part of them that's missing. It's just not connecting right. They can make those connections. The 12 steps therapy will bring those connections back, and then they can heal. Does that answer your question? Just I Nation says, I've gone no contact, yet except that you talk about her in the present. You say, told me, she says. So if you're right and you really are no contact, then yeah, you haven't done the 4 things. So let me make it really clear. Being no contact isn't enough. The trauma bond continues after the relationship is, quote, over. And this is why people 10, 20, 30 years later are still in horrific mental, emotional pain, even though they haven't seen their borderline ex in years or decades. And in essence, the relationship isn't over. So just because you're no contact doesn't mean that you're out of the relationship. You're still in it. How do I know? Because you keep asking me these ridiculous questions about your ex, what she's thinking, should I trust her? Healthy people don't do that. I mean, I was married. She had borderline tendencies, but she wasn't a borderline. I was married to a woman. We got divorced. There was all kinds of stuff. I didn't think or wonder if what she said was true or if I didn't. It was over. I was hurt. She had done all these things, and she's saying the same about me. But there was closure. It's over. That's, normal relationships. You don't go, I wonder if she meant, I wonder. When you're in a codependent relationship, even if that person's dead, you're still I wonder if she was telling the truth. I wonder if I could have done it differently, because you're still there. Even though you say you're not, you still. And I know, Just I Nation, I know if she showed up at your door in a teddy with a porn video, you'd be right back in it. There'd be no hesitation. You're not done. You need help. I won't have any sympathy for you until you do the three things: therapy, work the 12 steps, daily meditation. If you want to come back on my channel, which you're welcome to do, and you want to keep asking questions, I'm going to know whether you've done the work or not. And I won't have true sympathy for you until you've done the work. All right? And I'll be able to know by your question, by the way. Anyway, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty, but I'm trying to lovingly encourage you to get healthy. This isn't the Super Empath channel where we spend the whole time talking about how horrible the narcissist is and what they do and why they're this. And this is about recovery. And as long as I feel like what I'm doing is helping people, and I'm interested in the subject matter, and people are actually recovering, I'll keep doing this channel. If at some point I feel like all I'm doing is just talking smack about borderlines, I'll stop doing it, because there's nothing in that. And I'll just work on myself. But so far that hasn't been the case. All right, I'm done talking now. I'm going to go eat some food. I hope you're all doing well. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And I will see you when I see you.